Yield to Ranking Member Takai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do appreciate the extra time. I have three more questions. We have heard from all of you about the problems associated with this rule. Ms. Armstrong, in your opinion, is there anything that can be done to reduce the costs associated with this rule to make compliance easier for small business, or should GSA start from scratch?
In my view, I think GSA should start from scratch and look at its own federal internal resources for this data. As we discussed, there's a great risk for contractors providing information to GSA. If the information isn't correct, they can receive allegations that potentially would subject them to False Claims Act liability. So there's a great risk in contractors providing information to the government, which means they have to assure that the information they provide is correct, and that's one of the things that substantially increases the costs. Where it is and we're talking here about federal orders. We're not talking about commercial orders. GSA is seeking information on federal orders. So that information is within the government. I think GSA needs to look at its own systems and develop a way that they can make use of the information already in their possession.
Thank you. And Mr. Stanford, some have argued that the GSA will use this new information to make businesses, force them to lower their prices if they feel the vendor is no longer offering a competitive price. However, small business margins, as many of you mentioned, are extremely low, and they at times cannot afford bulk discounts like the big companies. Is it clear to you what would happen if the GSA wanted to lower a price, but a small business was unable to do so?
I think you would have two options. Either the small business would leave the federal market if they could no longer bear the small margins to make sure they were profitable, or as in the case for some small businesses that rely 80–90% of revenue in the federal market, they would go out of business.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, and I think many of you mentioned this, has to do with the inability for GSA to really figure this thing out themselves due to their antiquated computer systems. So I just wanted to dig a little deeper, and maybe Mr. Horan, you can spend some time talking about that comment you made in your testimony about it would be just easier for them to upgrade their system so that they can track and monitor the information that they're requesting on their side rather than leave it to the burden of the small businesses.
Yeah, I'm not certain it'll be easier, but it'll be certainly they would have to face some of the same complexities that they're willing to impose on contractors. But the point I was trying to make is that GSA, likely anticipating the criticism that they're imposing this obligation on contractors, took a look at their system and indicated in the rule itself, the preface to the rule changes, that their systems would require changes because all of this data isn't contained in a single spot, and they would have to undergo the effort. And that's the same effort that concerns contractors. So they were unwilling to take that expense, despite the data being equally available to GSA as the contractors, and are willing to impose that on contractors. GSA, having access to this information, though, could readily create a database or modify databases to do exactly what they want to do. They could gather this information either directly or through transactions from other agencies. They're just unwilling to incur that expense.
Anybody have any more comments regarding this particular question?
Yes. Yeah. I don't know if it's the irony of the situation or not, is that GSA is going to have to spend money to build systems in any event, because the avalanche of data that they would be receiving under this rule, they're going to have to build systems. So why don't they take a look internally and see what's most efficient for them for the government to try to figure out to manage its own data, because they are going to have to build systems. We are talking, when you talk about monthly reporting across the GSA Schedules program, you're talking of hundreds of thousands of transactions, millions and millions of data elements to be reported, accessed, collected, they're going to have to build their own systems as well. And just a couple other points. With regard to the access, the question was great about, with recent events, the security of the confidential information. There's even, another area, and GSA did not, I think the public meeting that was held on the rule, they gained an appreciation of the level of concern across industry with regard to this issue. And even in that context, they have contractors supporting their effort. And there have been questions that I've received of what are the restrictions on those contractors with regard to use of the information that they're already getting that may be commercially proprietary information from other companies. And lastly, just a thought on the question about whether people would have to leave if they're told lower your price. We get reports, regularly of companies being asked to either lower their price or remove the item from the contract. And I know, the GSA leadership is taking a position that that's not, and they have, to their credit, have said that's not the goal here from their perspective. But at the working level and operational level, contracting officers, almost daily are asking companies to either lower their price because they found a lower price on a horizontal, comparison. If you don't lower that price, you need to delete the item from the contract.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.